Awesome. All right. Well, we're back again for another episode in the series about just, defining what a great sales rep is, how to be one, what isn't, what is. So we're on video number 2, which is the perfect sales professional part 1, all the intangibles. So everything that you can't really see and can't, define or qualify, we're going to try to nail it down and see how things go.
Yeah. Thanks, Philip. And I would say that I've trained hundreds of sales reps in my life. And what you're looking for, if you're out there searching for advice on how to build a sales team or how to become a sales professional, um, a lot of videos that I see are guys that are really good salespeople of themselves. And the difference I would say is empirical versus theoretical. All of the data that I have is from actual 30 years of leading sales teams, being a top tier sales rep in my field in every aspect of whatever I was selling, whether it was, I'm selling furniture and retail or selling IT solutions to large banks and hospitals, or selling credit card processing or banking services, and even selling to board members, boards of directors, being on boards. Those are all types of selling, and I've done all of those and done all of those really well. And then I've built teams throughout the years. Many of the employees that I once had now own their own businesses, and I can think of at least a half a dozen guys that at one time worked for me, had never worked in my industry, and now own their own businesses. So uh, when you're looking for success, when you're looking for a mentor, no matter who it is, doesn't have to be me, doesn't have to be Philip, but it needs to be somebody that's actually done it, that hasn't done it in theory, but has done it in practice. So I call that the empirical versus theoretical. I'm looking for a mentor that's actually sat in the foxhole and been through a few battles. And if that's what you're looking for, I've trained hundreds of guys that are sitting in your spot, wondering if they can make it in sales or wondering if they can build an effective sales team. Maybe you've been thrust into sales leadership and you've got to build a team, but you don't know how to do it. I'm going to give you the basics of what to look for in a sales professional. So, you ready?
Yeah, that's good.
The first thing that I look for is an effective communicator. Um, and I mean communicating. They don't have to be a guy that gets up and gives speeches at the Chamber of Commerce. They don't have to be public speakers necessarily, but can they communicate effectively? And good communication isn't just verbosity. It's not just being eloquent, right?
Mm.
In fact, I would rather not have the most persuasive guy in the world. But a lot of people think that sales is persuasion. And in some ways it is. But I like to get to the point in a sale where I love to ask this closing question. This is my favorite closing question when I'm talking to a prospect, and that's this. Based on everything that I've told you or that we've discussed, is there any logical reason that we shouldn't do business?
Mm.
And so for me, sales is a process of breaking down barriers, of earning someone's trust, maybe because I didn't know the answer to a question and I've gotten that answer for them, or maybe because I've actually had to say no. And
Mm.
I've said, look, we sell hot tubs. If you really need one that is also an ice bath, if that's going to keep us from doing business, I'm sorry, we're not going to be able to do business. Is that really what you want? So
Hmm.
um, whatever your product or service is, you've got to be able to say no, because there's no possible way that you can say yes to every customer unless you're not telling the truth. So you have
Right.
to be able to say no. But I'm looking for an effective communicator, not just in how they speak, but in their body language. Do they seem sincere?
Mm.
There's two things that every person must have in order to sell something to someone else. What do you think they are, Philip? Two things that you have to have.
Well, you need to be trustworthy first off, and
Bingo.
then
You got it. You nailed the first one. I've got to trust that your product or service is going to fulfill my needs, right? I
mhm,
don't care if you're selling silly putty. If that silly putty is good silly putty and it's, the kind of silly putty that I'm looking for as a 8-year-old kid walking down the Target aisle, they don't even probably sell silly putty anymore. I'm dating myself, but that's what I want. I got to trust that product is going to work for me. And the next one is, um, so I've earned the trust, right, from the product or whatever it is. And the next one is, you know, is the product effective for me? Like, have I taught you, is the product going to solve my problem? So
Right.
do I trust you, the individual selling it to me? And do I trust that the product or service is going to effectively solve my problem? And if my problem is I'm bored and I need silly putty, then that's great. But if your problem has a few more metrics than that, and maybe you need some IT solutions or new software to run your CRM at your medical practice, then hopefully you've asked the right questions. We've come to the point where you say, this is affordable. This does everything that I needed to do. Give me the keys to the car. I'd like to try it out. Right.
Right.
So those two things are important. And how I effectively communicate that is really, really, really important.
Mm-hmm.
Communication is about pauses as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about just talking. Communication is a two-way street.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm in an interview and a guy or gal is just telling me about themselves and they're not asking questions, I'm usually pretty concerned. So
Right.
one of the keys of a sales leader, if I'm hiring, if I'm building my team, I don't necessarily need A players, and I'm going to do a whole video series on that. In fact, I would rather build a team with B players than necessarily the A players. A players are great. You need some of them. But the core, the functionality of the B player and how they operate, you can really mold them and teach them. A lot of A players aren't coachable.
Yeah.
So effective communicator. Number 2, and I've got, I think, 12 of these that we've got, 14 points that the intangibles that an effective sales. So in other words, an intangible is something they need to have. I'm not really going to be, I might be able to enhance that, but I'm not going to be able to teach it to them. They're going to have it. The second one is quick on their feet. And I'll give you this example. I was in Brandon, Florida, and I was training a young lady. She was pregnant. She was just going into sales for the first time. And so she's following me around. My idea of sales training was basically, I'm going to go do it for you and you're going to watch. And then I'm going to let you open up the sale and then I'm going to help you close it. And then I'm going to let you open and close the sale and I'm going to watch. And then I'm going to let you do it all by yourself. So sort of my tactic in sales training. So we were in phase 1. I was doing everything for her. I was cold calling and I was going to put the pricing on the table and do the proposal and everything. So I walked into this Asian marketplace and we looked like salespeople. We had briefcases in hand. We had the look, And this lady, she's trying to run her business. And she looks at 2 salespeople walking in the door and she says, "Oh, you're a salesperson, get out." And she was Korean. Had Korean accent. She was 4'9", short lady, really sweet, petite lady, but not so sweet to a salesperson, right?
Right.
Emphatic that she did not have time for us. And I said, "Ma'am, I'm actually not a salesperson. I'm a credit card processing consultant, right? And I can solve your problem." And to that, she had a bad experience with credit card processing sales reps. She spit on her own floor. She literally looked down and goes, she said, "Get out of my store." And she dropped a superlative, which we all know. Starts with, she said, "Get the F out of my store," right? And the young lady behind me she's can't believe that someone just said that. And I dropped my briefcase on the floor and I put up my fist like this. I said, "Look, you're Korean, you eat dogs and you smell funny. Let's fight. Let's fight." And she looked at me like I was crazy. And then she smiled and she said, "Oh, you're crazy." She said, "But I don't handle it. My husband handles everything."
Mm.
And I said this one thing, and I said, ma'am, if your preconceived notions about me are just as wrong as the one that I just gave to you,
Mm.
can we drop all of those misconceptions about one another and actually have a real conversation? Like, can we really get real for a moment? Because obviously, someone in my industry has really hurt you. And for that, I'm really sorry. And I'd
Yeah.
like to help. I'd like to find out what happened because I'm not that guy. And I'm going
Mm.
to take care of your problem. And so she invited us in. I got on the phone with her husband, who was at home. He came to the shop, and I presented what we had to offer, and we wrote the deal that afternoon. And I'm walking to the car, and the young lady who watched the whole thing
Mm-hmm.
got into the car, and she looked at me and she said, "Yeah, I can't do that."
Mm.
She said, I quit. There's no way I could have done that. She said, I would have walked to my car after she said, get out, with a superlative and cried. And so, but there's ability that you have to have in sales. And it's also a bit of a confidence in knowing who you are
Mm-hmm.
and knowing the product that you sell. I knew that she'd been hurt when she spit on her own floor and said, credit card guy, you're a bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
She lumped all of us in the same group. Well, that's easy to do. It's understandable. But I knew that I was not that guy. I was
Yeah.
confident that I could solve the problem. And so if you have the ability, and I don't, you can call it what you want it is to call it, but you've got to have the ability to say quickly, change the perspective of that person. And sometimes it's a radical sort of what I call a mental slap.
Mm-hmm.
Because we all have these uh, exchanges, and sometimes our brains aren't even really working. Like, you get up in the morning and you got a cup of coffee in your hand and you pass your wife and you go, good morning, good morning. And there's really like no thought. I'm
Mm-hmm.
barely awake. I'm a zombie, right? And I think that we do that often, especially in the sales exchange process. When you're cold
Mm-hmm.
calling, many times you're really not engaging with that human being one to one. You're not really getting their full attention. You're
Yeah.
getting the side attention, like, hey, I'm busy. What do you want? And they don't know how to tell you that they're trying to run their business. They've got
Mm-hmm.
fires over here, employees that didn't show up over here. They got a grill that's on the fritz, and they got a repairman coming, and you're bothering them. Oh, by the way, and they're trying to make money.
Yeah.
And so, how do you get to the point where you can actually say, this is a real exchange between you and me?
Mm-hmm.
I need to be able to get to that point. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not, there's not every human being can do that. In fact, I think there's an art form to sales. It's not just scientific. It's not just put it in a box. And
Mm-hmm.
I actually worked for a sales engineer but he was an engineer by trade.
Mm-hmm.
He was an IT guy, and he literally put boxes. He created for me the sales cycle as if I didn't know it, but he gave it to me. He's my
Mm-hmm.
boss, so I said, "Okay, I will tell you when each one of these is in the cycle, and I'll put it in the CRM." Well, I actually went to a place, cold called a hospital. I was selling IT services, so it's a longer sales cycle typically. And they said, "Look, we're looking for a bid right now on switches or routers. We just had Cisco in. We like their product, so if you are a reseller, we'd love to do that." Well, hey, I'm a reseller. Let's do that. So I came back and I said, "Hey, I need a quote for this. This is the specs." I spec'd it out. I knew enough at the time of what they needed, and my boss said, "No, we can't do that. I mean, you're way far away in the sales cycle. You have to go back and do this and this and this." I said, "No, you don't understand. I went through all of those qualifications, and we're here. We're at the
Mm-hmm.
precipice. Let's close the sale." Anyway, uh, you got to be able to be quick on your feet.
Yeah.
And it's not something that you can put in a box. This talent and ability is something that just people have or they don't.
Yeah.
And I need a salesperson that's quick. And so I'm looking for that. Number three, the third aspect that I'm looking for in a sales leader is, are they curious? Are they good learners? I remember one of my first sales jobs, I was in my early 20s, and I walked into an electronics store called Silo in Columbia, Missouri. and I'm selling stereo equipment, right? We had decent, stereo. We had, Yamaha and Sony and Pioneer, and I had no idea what a receiver was, no idea what an amp was. I knew what a record player was that was all in one that my mom had bought from Montgomery Ward's. I didn't know what any of those things were. I had to learn about it. So if you're going to sell something, I literally had to go and take the owner's manuals home and read them and be curious about the products that I was selling. I understood what a TV was. I knew what picture-in-picture was. This was back in the day, right? I knew what a VCR was. I didn't know what a hi-fi VCR was, but I had to learn those things. I had to literally take owner's manuals home, figure them out. And in the meantime, I also had to figure out how to become a good salesperson, how to greet someone, how to not be too overly oppressive with them. So I read sales books, I read owner's manuals, and pretty soon, within about 3 or 4 months, I was the number one salesperson in the store and one of the best sales reps in the company because I was a curious learner. And you don't know what you don't know. A great sales leader once told me that. And if you don't know your own products, then man, you are set up to fail. I need a guy that's not just going to wing it. And sometimes these A guys, they've been so successful being persuasive that they've never really had to work hard. And I need a guy that's willing to do the work, because great sales leaders, great sales professionals, they don't just know their products. They know their competitors' products. Like, I would go to the other stores in town and I'd look up, hey, what does this receiver do that mine doesn't? And I certainly didn't mind sending a guy over there. I just didn't have the solution. It just seemed right to do. So be a curious learner. Number 4, and Tony Robbins says that empathy is the number one aspect that he looks for in a salesperson. And I think he's right. I think you've got to remove your commission, remove your bonus structure, remove all of that from your mind when you're selling to an individual. It should be about them. The solution should be for them. It should be tailored to them, and it should be without your money in mind, right? And so I want to sit on the other side of the table. I want to hear your pains. I want to hear your desires. What makes you happy? What's going to change the way you look at life? How can I help you? Because if I can earn that person's trust, then they're probably going to be glad to give me 3 or 4 of their friends and family, right?
Right.
If and at one time I sold life insurance. I worked for Northwestern Mutual, great company, and but if all I had to sell them was whole life insurance, that's not a good situation, right? There's other financial products that person needs. And as you progress in your career as a financial planner, if the only thing that you've sold 30 years into it is whole life, you probably haven't done a good job for your clients. You've got to have, hopefully, good products and services that you're selling to your clients, but you need to be able to put yourself on the other side of the table and really find a solution just for them. So naturally empathetic is something that you have to do. I don't think that I can teach empathy. I think I can model it and let someone feel it and see it, but it's something they have to get. And when I'm hiring someone, I'm looking for that the person that is going to put themselves on the other side of the table. And I'll do a video on the questions to ask or scenarios that, as a sales leader, you want to put someone in, because, man, the hiring process for sales professionals is whacked. And you're going to get some really strange answers to questions. Most of them are cookie cutters. But if you put people in scenarios, real world scenarios, and you let someone talk you through those things, you'll find a whole lot more about them and about what they would do. You can hire the right people. All right. Number 5 is probably one of my favorite things about sales. It's called playing good defense. What do you think I mean by that? Play good defense.
Just like always being on guard is like the first thing that comes to my mind. Trying to get rid of all the negatives beforehand and like neutralize the situation before you get there, so that they don't have anything bad to say. Like how you were saying with the lady, how you came in there looking like a salesman and she instantly, went at you. Like playing defense could have been maybe not being so obvious with it, and then having the guard lowered. But that's just my first kind of thoughts.
Yeah, you're pretty right. One of the things that is let's not lose the sale before we can get it.
Yeah.
So let's dress the part. Now, I don't know what that means in your industry.
Mm-hmm.
I handle people's money. So when I'm handling people's money, I typically dress like a banker. I act like I handle people's money, right?
Yeah.
I don't necessarily like to wear a tie, but if I'm going to a pretty big organization, I'll wear a tie. If I'm, I live close to the beach, so if I'm going down to the beach, I'll wear a Tommy Bahama shirt and a pair of slacks. I'm not to the point where I can wear flip-flops to a sale yet. There's people that do that, but I'm not the guy, right? If I'm selling real estate, I'm going to dress like my local. I'm going to dress at the top tier of what my local real estate agents dress.
Mm.
I'm also, I love this, in retail or in business-to-business sales. Let's say you're selling advertising, and that nice front parking space is right there, and you're about to walk into the gym, and you're going to get their advertising budget, and you parked in their front spot, and that guy looks at you and goes, I thought you were a customer. You parked in my very best parking spot so that the lady who's got a little hurt knee who comes into the gym every day has to park, 3 miles away because you took a spot. Don't do that. Like if you're a sales rep, don't even park anywhere near the door. Park away from the door. Be courteous to every person that you're. These are just logical things that maybe aren't quite as logical as they used to be, but you got to play good defense. I had one guy, he was a smoker, and he had to have a cigarette just about every time he got out of the car. So we're cold calling, and he lights up a cigarette on the way, and I'm saying, man, we don't have time. We're about to walk into this lady's shop, and he smokes the cigarette like 3 puffs, throws it on the ground, stomps on it, opens the door. And I think he even exhaled the smoke in her shop. These are all no-nos, right? And she looked at us and she said, wait a minute, you're trying to sell me something? She said, I'll tell you what you can do with a cigarette butt. You just throw on my sidewalk. And it wasn't nice. Like we were in Louisiana. It wasn't nice, right? She told him like it was. And I kind of laughed as a sales manager. I'm thinking, yeah, that's not smart. That's just not smart to lose a sale before you can get it, right? So do the little things, dress the part, act the part, and please, oh my gosh, do not bring up politics or religion in a sale cycle. It doesn't have any place. It doesn't belong there. It just doesn't belong there. If you're selling and you're looking for someone to confirm your beliefs, maybe you believe Bigfoot's walking around outside and you just got to talk about Bigfoot. I don't know what it is, but if that's your thing, leave it for the close. Like wait until everything's closed up and say, hey, what do you think about Bigfoot? Do you think he's real? That's okay. That's okay. But I think politics and religion, certain topics, just need to be omitted from the sales cycle. Like don't lose the sale before you get it. You never know where somebody is. All right. Number 6, emotional stability. Sales is the only profession that I know of where you're going to invert the psychological scale of rejection in your life. So as I said, I think in the last video, if you have a relationship that's more than 20% negative, we're naturally going to gravitate away from those relationships. And in sales, it's sometimes 80 to 90% rejection. So we're the ones that live on the little slivers of hope. Man, give me a crack in the daylight. I just need a little hope. I'm gonna walk on clouds if I got 10% hope, right? And a sales guy's like that. If you're a person who sees the world, I hate to say this, but most pessimists don't know they're pessimists. They think they're realists, right? They're in denial. But if you're in your mind, if you're a realist, which means you're probably a pessimist, you may not want to be in sales, right? If everything the sky is always falling, if the economy's terrible and everything in your life, if your self-speak in your life is typically bad, don't go into sales. It's going to wreck your mind. It's going to wreck your mind. It's really, this is really for the guys who they look at the glass and they go, man, this thing, I know there's 2 drops in it, but it'll sustain me for life, right? That's the craziness of a
Yeah.
salesperson. I need you to be a little crazy on the hope side. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I need you to have some good mental health. But sometimes sales can be a solitary business. And
Hmm.
so I would find people that would bring me up. They weren't in my area. So I gravitated to a good friend named John, and we would get on the phone sometimes, a couple times a day, and just say, "Hey,
Hmm.
man, I just heard this guy blew me out of the water. I just gave I just I just gave him the worst cold call I've ever had in my life. Like I just got beat down, man. Tell me a good joke." And he tell me a good joke, and he says, "Hey, man, you're gonna be okay. You got bumped and bruised. Get back in there. Get back in the game." You need a guy like that in your corner.
Hmm.
Find yourself another sales leader that will help you with your mental state, because sales is 90, sometimes 95% rejection, and so
Yeah.
I need you to have that. Number 7 is need. I like a sales rep that drives up in a car that clearly has a note. I like a sales rep um, that is in debt, that has a mortgage, that has 3 kids and one on the way. I like that guy, right?
Yeah.
I'm not looking for the guy who's couch surfing, that has no roots and no responsibility.
Mm.
Typically, they just don't last. There's a reason that they are there, right?
Hmm.
Um, so it's really easy to hire a guy out of college that lives with his parents, and that person might be really talented, but I really prefer the guy that's a little bit hungry. I need
Yeah.
somebody hungry. So I look for need, disciplined and determined. I Some people say, "Well, what background are you looking for?" I don't necessarily hire people from sales backgrounds.
Hmm.
I like to hire people that have been in the military, that have no sales background, typically because they've been through some hard things. Boot camp's not easy, right? It's hard, it's difficult. So they've got the discipline, and they're coachable to do some of the harder things. I love athletes, people that have been in any kind of form, any form of athletics, except maybe the Johnsonville Bratwurst, the cornhole championship. I'm not sure how difficult that is. I'm not saying cornhole's not hard, but I'm not
Yeah.
going to say I've ever worked up a sweat playing cornhole. But if you've been in anything else, if you played rugby, football, basketball, baseball, golf, tennis, man, you've been through some hard, you put your body through the test, right?
Hmm.
And I'm looking for a guy who loves, especially that's been on a team,
Hmm.
that's been in that team dynamic, but that has disciplined their body. Because if you can discipline your body, you can discipline your mind. So I really look for somebody that's been on a team. I'll tell you another thing too. I had a guy. I was looking at resumes. I had about 6 resumes, and I couldn't decide. And I looked over at the back of the resume, and these were fairly new people out of college. They didn't have a ton of experience, but they were in their early 20s, late 20s. And one thing stood out to me, and I actually offered the guy the job. He ended up not taking it, but it was because he was an Eagle Scout. Um, and that's not an easy thing to get, right? That takes discipline, it takes time. And so when I saw that, I was like, that's the guy. That's the guy that I would hire. And then I would even say, like, if you're a black belt or a brown belt, if you've been in martial arts and you've stayed with it for a long time, a black belt's just a white belt that stayed with it, right? You just, if you're determined enough and disciplined enough to stay with it, even through maybe an injury or two, hey man, I'm there. That's a guy that I'm interested in. Another thing is musical learning. If you're proficient in music, typically that means you got a creative mind, number one.
Hmm.
But it also means that you've had the discipline to practice, and you understand the concept of constantly getting better. And so that's kind of what sales is. It's like being a musician. It's constantly learning and being creative and creating your own way and
Hmm.
figuring it out and having a glimmer of hope and doing it. So discipline and determined, those are aspects that I look for. Those are attributes that I look for in a sales professional. Number 9, we touched on this. It's the ability to finish or stay the course. So the sort of 8 and 9 are both there together. But one thing I don't look for is people that have been from job to job. Someone that's worked for, in the last 3 years, they worked for 3 advertising agencies, or in the last 5 years, they worked for 5 car dealerships. I want somebody that is going to stick around. I don't like retraining people. I love developing a sales guy that's getting better and better. I like to see that his life is changing, that he's making the kind of money he's always dreamed of, that his family's more comfortable, that he's taking Fridays off. Because if you're a salesperson and you're working on Fridays, I think you're silly. Like, I stopped working on Fridays after like year 2, and that should be life changing. Like, hey, I get to control my time.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking for the guy that's disciplined, that has the ability to finish, that's not looking for another job. He's not just looking for greener pastures. And there are greener pastures, but and I don't mind if somebody takes a better job. I don't mind that at all. I want them to better themselves, but I don't want them to just go completely after the next best thing over and over and over. And hopefully we can take a great talent, because golly, if you can assemble a great team, man, you can have a great company. And that's what it's all about. It's not about you, the leader. It's about assembling a great team. And if you can incentivize them the right way to stay, and I think you can, like, give me all the talent I can, I'll figure out a way to keep on the team. Number 10, competitive drive. And again, I say I can build a good team with B players, but some of your B players are pretty competitive. They're quietly competitive. And I like that attribute about someone. I like to put them in situations where I encourage them in a way of saying, hey, man, this guy he's been salesperson of the month for 3 months in a row. What are you going to do about it? And so, yeah, I like that guy. I really do. So competitive drive. I want to see the trophies. I want to see where you won a few things in your life. Tell me about the time that you were the salesperson of the month at the last company you were at. Tell me what you did and why. And some people can be great. There's a lot of people at today's market, and I've dealt with all types. But you ever had the sales rep that's just really good? He knows a lot of people. And so that person's maybe not really good at cold calling, but they're good at networking. And I don't think your sales can ever be consistent if you're just good at networking. You can know everybody in town, and that person might give you, hey, you did me a favor, I'm going to do him a favor. But until you become proficient at the cold call, your sales are going to be up and down, up and down, up and down. And so the competitive drive is someone who has the ability to be consistent. Networkers typically have big sales, they'll have great months, and then they fade into the distance for 3 or 4 months, 6 months. And then they have another big month, and then all of a sudden they fade into the distance. And so that's never good for a company. Like, it's not good for morale, it's not good for that sales rep. Lou Holt said, I was a great salesperson. When I went into sales, after 3 months, I was selling my furniture, sold my watch, I sold everything I had because I was broke.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that's where a good networker will be, and that's not a sales pro. If you're just good at networking, then there's other skill sets that you've got to hone in order to be a consistent sales pro. Number 11, I've mentioned this already, not overly verbose. If a person's talking a lot, and I realize that's what these videos are, which I don't really like.
Right.
Philip's coerced me to do this, so I'm doing it. But me-centric salespeople usually don't finish well. They're not great for the team. And if they're always telling stories about themselves and they have to be the center of attention, that's usually not good for anybody in the company. And a lot of times their ego is so that you have to stoke it over and over and over. You spend a lot more time on them. And that's a lot of times the guy that I just don't want on my team. And I'm not saying that those things are coachable, but there's some intangible things, maybe some that if you're building a team, it's difficult to have time for that. Now, if he's the best guy you have, or if he's the guy that's already on your team, spend some time with him and find out why he has to be the center of attention.
Mm.
There's a loose wire in there. There's a brokenness in that person that can't just be the quiet one in the room sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So, number 12 is a life vision. I hope that when I hire someone to work for my company, that they have bigger plans in mind. Like this is a great opportunity. There's no doubt you can make six figures in the credit card processing industry. You can build residual income, and it's great. I love my industry. It's hard. It's not easy. And I tell people all the time that I hire, I said, look, you should be thankful that it's not easy, because otherwise I could pay people $20 an hour to do it.
Yeah.
So be grateful that it's a six-figure opportunity. Don't ever say, man, I wish it was easier. If it was so easy, everybody would do it. But it's not. Sales isn't easy. It's hard. And you're going to go through days where you look at yourself and you go, can I really do this? We've all been through that. Like sometimes in the afternoon, maybe you just need to go sit in a matinee and collect yourself. I've had to do that a few times where you got the sale that you didn't, that you thought you were going to get, your competitor swooped in and got it. And I tell people all the time, my best prospect is somebody else's best customer, and so, and my best customer is somebody else's best prospect. I better do a good job. And if I'm prospecting someone, don't be surprised that existing sales rep might go back into it and solve the whole problem, whatever you're trying to fix, right? And so, things happen, good things, great things happen, bad things happen in sales. Really hard days happen. And if you don't have a life vision, if you don't have goals that you've set for your day, month, year, and 5 years down the road, you're probably just drifting through life. That's a really sad situation. A lot of people do it. And then they wake up and they wonder, how they got there. And I ask the question often of myself, if I keep going where I'm going, where will I be? And so if you're a guy that's just drifting down the river of life and you don't have goals and you haven't a life vision, probably not the guy I want on my team. And if you are drifting, but you want a life vision and you want someone to help you craft that, I'm game, man. I'll help you with that. Because hopefully your dream is not to be a credit card processing sales rep. Like when you were 8 years old, that was no one's dream. Fireman, policeman, credit card processing sales rep. No, that's not it. That's not who you were.
Yeah.
But this life is pretty good. It is a pretty good life. And looking back, I'm glad I'm not a doctor, because I know doctors that work way harder than I do and make less money.
Yeah.
I'm glad I'm not a dentist, because I heard that dentists are the most depressed of all professionals. Like, that's surprising to me. The suicide rate is the highest in the dental industry. And I didn't know that, but pretty sad. Glad I'm not a dentist. So have good friends that are dentists. And so check on your dentist, encourage them. I didn't know that they were such sad people. Number 13 is adaptability. I need the salesperson to be able to adapt. Look, market conditions are going to change. Sometimes things are going great, and all of a sudden a board of directors meeting happened and your comp plan changes, right? That has happened to me, I don't know how many times, that the manager has to come in and he's shoveling poop, and we all know it, but he's got to make it smell like roses to the team. And you're like, come on, man, this is not as good as what it was last month. I know, but that's the way it is. And you just got to roll with the punches. And I probably, as a younger sales rep, I did not do well when my comp plan got changed. I didn't like it. But that's just the way big companies operate. And that's the way budgets and boards of directors will do things. As they start making more money, they're going to start taking more money. And so if you're a really great salesperson, you are a highly sought after commodity. You are somebody that's valuable. And so your opinion should matter, and you should maybe share it, things like that. But But hopefully you're a good team player. And sometimes, of course, you just need to switch teams. You know, hey, man, the other company across the road is willing to pay me more and better, and they got a good product. So, hey, that's okay too. But in life, in general, you need to be adaptable. And that's part
Mm-hmm.
of the mental health. Part of that is being able to accept change. Maybe technology comes. Like, I remember when I first had to put all my leads into a CRM, I hated it. I was like, man, this is taking half of my time. I'm working on this software instead of going out to cold call. Yeah, but the company asked me to do it.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to honor my leader. I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do what they've asked me to do. Right? I like to complain sometimes, so that's all right. And if you've got the sales to back it up, you can complain a little. You know,
A little
let
bit.
them know what you did. The last piece of the puzzle, and it's an important piece, is humility. Uh, a salesperson understands that they're not going to win every sale. And sometimes you're going to get beat by a good competitor. And I honor my competitors. I actually wrote this series called The Adversary. I had this trumped up vision of what this guy was in my mind. You know, my adversary that was out there, he was up earlier than me. He was working
Mm-hmm.
harder than me. He knew his product better than me. And I think great competitors make us all better. You know, I think
Mm-hmm.
Auburn is better because of Alabama. Alabama's better because of Auburn. Ohio State's better because of Michigan, and so on and so forth. I think Sears was better because of Montgomery Ward. You know, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that as we all have great competitors, we learn from them, and it takes humility sometimes to learn that you got your butt kicked. It
Mm-hmm.
takes humility sometimes to be able to pivot and say, I need to get better in a certain way. Uh, and so that's a strong attribute of what I'm looking for. And because humility also gives yourself the grace to fail and to
Mm-hmm.
keep trying. Um, and so it's really important to me to see a sales rep that has humility, a professional person that's humble enough to admit mistakes, correct them quickly, and keep moving forward. You know,
Mm-hmm.
humility will also keep a salesperson from always saying yes to a customer or client.
Right.
Like I said before, you can't constantly say yes and it be truth. So humility says sometimes willing to say the truth, the hard things, and lose the sale and let the person walk because you just don't have the solution that's right for them, or they don't understand the solution. And that's happened to me before too.
Mm.
So that's it. Those are the intangibles that I'm looking for in a sales rep and a really good, strong sales professional. Obviously, some people are going to be better at some of those things. Some people are not. And there's hopefully some of that attributes that I've talked about that you as the leader will model. But if I'm building a sales team, this is my rubric. Now, my next video is going to be on the tangibles, the things that I can coach, the things that I can help teach.
Yeah.
And so I think you should be excited to watch that video. So if you're a sales pro and you are a leader and you're building a team, I think these two videos are extremely important to help you build your team.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more, Nate. These last two videos have been awesome. They've given me a lot of perspective as well, especially with us working together. And if you wouldn't mind, would you mind telling the story about you in New Orleans on that rainy day? Because I feel like that perfectly encapsulates everything that's on this list right here in
Yeah.
a nice little bow.
Yeah, so I'll tell the story and then we'll end the video. So I used to just drive to different cities and cold call. And I was like, why not go to New Orleans? I'm only 2 hours from there. So I got up early one morning, got down. This is in July, June or July. It's hot. And I get down to the French Quarter, and I had just bought a new pair of Cole Haans. Now, I had a baby. I was, a new pair of shoes was $100. That was expensive to me back in the day, and so it starts raining. And anybody that's been in New Orleans knows that it takes a little bit to drain. And so I'm looking at my shoes and already in 2 inches of water, and I just take them off. I take my socks off. I roll up my pants, and I look like Huck Finn walking down the street. And so I walk into a bar in the French Quarter, And the barter goes, "Hey man, pouring rain." And he's the only one in there, and nobody else is there. And he says, "Hey, we're just about to open up, man. What do you want? You know, we have burgers and things like that. They sold food too." And I said, "Man, I'm not here to buy anything. I'm here to talk to you about your credit card processing." And he looked at me like I was an alien. And he said, "Are you joking?" He says, "Hold on. I can't believe you're actually going to sell me something." I said, "Yeah, I'm sorry. I took my shoes off. I didn't want to ruin my shoes." He goes, "Oh, no, no, it's fine." He calls three of his friends that owned restaurants and bars right around. And so he says, "Hey, you got to hear this guy pitch. This guy's different. He's fool enough to walk around in New Orleans barefooted. No telling what I was getting on my feet, right?"
Right.
Well, I sat there with 3 or 4 guys, and I sold 3 accounts that day, and I made several $1,000s, and of course, the relationships and residuals, and they all gave me referrals. So I don't know really how much money I made because I was willing, instead of getting in my car and waiting for the rain to end and waiting for the floodwaters to go down. I just said, "Nah, I'm not going to put on talk radio. I'm going to go cold calling. I'm here to do my job." And
Hmm.
when I went in sales, I would treat it like I had a hard hat and a lunch pail, like I was going down into the coal mine, and that was just my job for the day. And so that mindset made me more money than I can ever imagine, because I was just so determined to do what I was supposed to do every single day. And
Hmm.
so that determination will bring you far in this career and really any career. Um, and so be willing to be different. Be willing to be humble enough to take your shoes off and
Right.
walk in a place barefoot if you got to, right? And
Right.
I
Be
bet
willing
those
to
guys
adapt.
still tell that story, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, I appreciate you reminding me of that.
Yeah, man. I think that was one of the best stories. One of the best stories. You got plenty of them, but I feel like it really encapsulates everything about, being adaptable, being humble enough to do it, being disciplined enough, playing defense, even though I guarantee you were looking good as you could, soaking wet, coming in there and everything, being an effective communicator. So I appreciate this one, Nate, and I hope everybody sticks tuned for the next couple of videos in the series.
Thanks a lot, Philip.
Sir.